Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Warren Fry, digital media editor for the Journal of Commerce and Daily Commercial News, and it's the 5 pods of Christmas. And today we have staff writer Russell Hickson, who's going to give us his predictions on the future and what he thought were the biggest stories of the year. So, Russell, take it away.
Hi, yes, this is Russell Hickson, staff writer at the Journal of Commerce. I think I think the past few years have obviously been dominated by coronavirus, and worker shortages and things like that. So I'm gonna do something a little different. What I think one of the biggest stories of the year has been, and it may have passed a lot of people by, but I think it touches on a lot of
Mhm.
different things that are important, especially for the future of the construction sector, and it's the Sam Fitzpatrick death case. Um,
Okay.
and readers of the Journal of Commerce probably know that we've been covering this for many, many years, almost since I started at the Journal of Commerce years ago.
Mhm.
Um, and the case completely fell apart this year. The charges, after many many delays and years of it kind of sitting on the shelf. So much time had passed that memories had faded. That there were conflicts of interest and all sorts of things where the prosecutors just felt like they couldn't secure a conviction. They dropped the case. And to remind people, before I go on too much further, Sam Fitzpatrick was a rock scaler and worker who was working for Kiewit on a Run of the River Dam project, I believe, in BC, and he was crushed by a boulder. Um, and there were a lot of signs that that was a very dangerous place to be working, and there's been a lot of dispute over what exactly caused the boulder to dislodge and strike the worker. But anyways, that case fell apart, and it was a case that used the Westray Act, or the Westray laws, which in themselves took many, many, many years to get to fruition, to get passed. And it just, I think whenever I talk to people about, what is the most important thing on a job site, almost without exception, everybody says, the number one thing is that everybody goes home at the end of the day. We don't care about
Mhm.
anything else above that. Like, the most important thing is that everybody goes home alive and safe and intact. And I think that everybody listening would agree. And so I think, in terms of strengthening that in the industry, this case is important because it's using an incredibly rarely used law that seems to be very, very tricky to use. Um, I don't know. I think this might be the next phase of health and safety. Some
Mhm.
of these criminal prosecutions, but it seems like there's quite a ways to go before, the Crown and other parties are able to wield this effectively. And I also think this really is important for recruitment. You don't ever hear about people who go into engineering, being worried about staying alive on a job site. You don't
Mhm.
worry, you don't hear about, someone who is a computer programmer, worried about their health and safety at work. And there's a lot of fields that are competing for labor, and we just had the Kelowna crane collapse, where a bunch of very young workers were killed in a horrific accident that was broadcast. The news of it was broadcast all over the country.
Mhm.
And that probably doesn't inspire confidence for parents to send their kids to a career where they might die. Like, that's
Mhm.
really bad for recruitment. And so I think this is really, really important for the future of construction. Obviously, to create an environment and a perception where this is a safe, good place to work. And, for the record, health and safety in construction has come such an incredibly long way. And a lot of it is a perception, because it's much, much, much safer than it used to be. But I think there's
Mhm.
still room for growth. And I think as the labor crunch increases, and as things become more difficult, I think, in terms of just the image and perception of construction, it's important to get stuff like this right. And I think stuff like the Fitzpatrick case is an opportunity, um, to maybe grow in that area. And that's why I think it's a very important case. And I'm definitely curious to see what happens with it. So.
So that kind of covers both the past and the future. Are there any other stories you think were, I mean, I could think of a few, but I'm sure you can too, of that were a big deal for the construction industry and beyond in
Oh,
2021?
absolutely. There's several things that I think are going to come to a head in the next few weeks and in early 2022. One of them is supply chains. Obviously, we saw this in BC. I recently spoke with the BC Trucking Association, and they said that they have no drivers to for capacity to increase the
Hmm.
capacity. It's just not there, and they're facing a lot of the similar things that the construction industry is they just not only do they not have enough workers, people to drive trucks, they also, even if they did have a bunch of people who said, yeah, I want to drive a truck, they can't just put them in a truck. It takes time to train them and get them, at a point where they can go down Highway 3 in a safe way. And then they also have a perception problem too. Just like the construction industry, some people view it as a dangerous industry. Um, so they're facing that. I think supply chain issues are gonna, this past year we saw lumber and steel and all sorts of other things go up and down and up and down. That's gonna probably continue, especially in BC with all of our damaged infrastructure and having to route trucks through the U.S. and all sorts of things like that. I also think maybe on the brighter side, I think we're going to see a digital renaissance. I think that the pandemic just turbocharged a lot of innovation in how to digitally do work. Um,
Hmm.
and I think we're going to see that continue. I think a lot of companies and a lot of businesses and people were kind of dabbling in it. But then, the coronavirus came and it just turbocharged it and it forced everybody to take that leap. And I think everyone's been kind of pleasantly surprised at how much they could get done. I know me and you have been to a lot of conferences where they're able
Yeah,
to
where we
get
don't
guests
leave the
and
house.
yeah, they're able to get guests and connect with people and network with people that they would have never been possible in person. So I think it's expanded a lot of things. And then even in 2021, I saw a lot of people coming out with new apps and tools to track workers and to track health and safety and to do digital credentialing. And a lot of those have been successful. I think we're going to see a lot more in terms of the digitization of construction and use of drones and various things
Hmm.
that keep people safer and increase communication and cut down on paper. I think that's some things that we're going to see. Also, like on the micro level, I'm still waiting to hear what happened with the Kelowna crane collapse.
Hmm.
That's just, to my knowledge, still being investigated. That's one of the worst tragedies in BC construction history. And I think a big story in 2022 is going to be dissecting that incident and figuring out what went wrong and what happened and making sure that it doesn't happen again. Because, like I alluded to before, having that on the news and that being, a big construction story, um, that I mean that hurts the construction sector, of course, and it has to be dealt with directly, and we need to figure out what happened, and we need to make sure that never happens again.
Hmm.
Because like I think everybody listening to this would agree, the most important thing on a job site is that everybody goes home safe, and
Hmm.
those guys didn't, and we got to get to the bottom of that.
I think just to throw in my own 2 cents, the other elephant in the room is probably infrastructure because we just had a lot of it go away suddenly thanks to a flood. So
Yeah.
that'll probably be a big deal in 2022 and was a big deal in the impact to it in 2021.
Yeah, well, they're saying, I believe they're saying the Coquihalla is going to be up to speed in February, weather permitting. Um, and then also there's going to be a huge kind of, I think, post-mortem on the
Hmm.
flooding and the slides and figuring out how do we build back better is the kind of the buzzwords, the
Hmm.
buzz term. Um, and that's a good question. How do we build it? Because there's only so much money and there's only so much workers and there's thousands of kilometers of highway and roads and bridges and all sorts of culverts and things. And we can't do everything at once. We have to prioritize. So it's figuring out how do we do the most with what we have, and I think that'll be an interesting discussion with the Ministry of Transportation and the Premier and everybody.
All right. On that note, tune in tomorrow for our next episode of the Five Pods of Christmas. And Russell, happy holidays.
Yes, thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.